और इस वक्त सीधे आपको ले चलते हैं चीन के हांगझू, जहां पर विदेश मामलों में प्रवक्ता विकास स्वरूप एक प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस कर रहे हैं.
Interactions with the other BRICS leaders at the BRICS leaders meeting. So I'll give you a broad brush picture of the meeting with the Chinese president. I'll only touch upon the broad themes that PM stressed upon in his interaction. I'm not going to go into the specifics. As always, it was a cordial meeting. As President Xi remarked, this was his 8th meeting with Prime Minister Modi. The Prime Minister began by condemning the terrorist attack on the Chinese embassy in Bishkek. He said that this was yet another proof of the continuing scourge of terrorism. He reiterated that our response to terrorism must not be motivated by political considerations. Prime Minister complimented President Xi for the excellent arrangements made for the G20 summit and expressed the confidence that it will be very successful. Turning to bilateral relations, Prime Minister said that he had always maintained that in order to make the Asian century a reality, the countries of Asia would have to take responsibility. In the context of India and China, he said that our peoples also have the expectation that we make every possible effort to fulfill their dreams of progress, development, and prosperity. Prime Minister said that he had always had a strategic vision for India-China relations. The India-China partnership is important not only for the two countries, but for the entire region and the world. Prime Minister said that as a matter of principle, both countries would have to be sensitive to each other's strategic interests. In order to promote positive convergences, we would also need to prevent growth of negative perceptions. For this, the specific actions by both countries would play the major role. India has worked, he said, to make progress in the closer developmental partnership with China. In particular, he highlighted that we have succeeded in maintaining peace and tranquility on the border. Cultural and people-to-people ties have also been increasing. Prime Minister said that to ensure durable bilateral ties and their steady development, it is of paramount importance that we respect each other's aspirations, concerns, and strategic interests. Finally, turning to the BRICS summit, Prime Minister extended a personal invitation to President Xi to come to Goa, which President Xi said he was very happy to accept. So I think this is, the broad thematic, perspective of Prime Minister's meeting with President Xi Jinping of China. I'll now turn to the meeting with Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. This was their second meeting. Last time also, I believe they had met at the G20 summit in Antalya. So Prime Minister began by congratulating him on his election victory. He said that India-Australia relations are full of energy, and in particular, he said that the implementation of the mutually agreed projects and programs had been considerably speeded up under Prime Minister Turnbull's guidance. He also thanked Prime Minister Turnbull for Australia's proactive support to India's membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group. Prime Minister Turnbull said that we continue to support India's inclusion in the NSG. The two leaders also discussed the possibilities of increasing trade and investment ties between India and Australia. In the context of trade, I think both sides felt that there was not enough two-way trade, that much more could be done, and that if the comprehensive economic cooperation agreement between India and Australia could be speeded up, then that would certainly provide much greater momentum to India-Australia ties. In terms of investment, Prime Minister sought the support of Prime Minister Turnbull in encouraging the Australian pension funds to invest in India. He said our Finance Minister had recently gone to Australia, at which time an Invest in India roundtable had been organized, and he outlined some of the major opportunities coming up in India, particularly in the infrastructure sector, and said that India, as a land of immense opportunities, Australian pension funds would find a big and very good business opportunity were they to invest in India in a big way. Then they also discussed defense and security cooperation. In this context, both sides positively assessed the recent naval exercises held between the two sides and agreed to remain in touch. Prime Minister then sought Prime Minister Turnbull's support for clean coal technology. He said that India, because of its clean energy targets, it is important for us to adopt as much clean coal technology as possible. And this is an area in which Australia has proven expertise, whether it is underground mining or other forms of mining. And to the extent that Australian companies can provide us those technologies, it would be a win-win partnership. He also assessed positively the Australia-India Strategic Research Fund. Last time, if you remember, when he had met Prime Minister Turnbull, he had said that this had led to very good research in the area of fortified bananas. And this time also, he said that we could use it for joint research in clean coal, clean water, and nanotechnology. The two leaders then discussed the continuing scourge of terrorism. Prime Minister said that it is important for all democratic forces to come together to counter this challenge. Our neighborhood, in particular, he said, was now suffering from the destabilizing effects of terrorism. A number of countries he mentioned in this context, even Afghanistan, Russia, China, they were all facing terrorist threat emanating from our region. And it was important for us to identify the suppliers and exporters and financiers of terrorism. Otherwise, the world is going to face a huge, huge problem and challenge in the coming weeks and months. His overall message was that we need a unified approach on countering terrorism. Finally, I think the Prime Minister also said that in fact, it was Mr. Malcolm Turnbull who began that discussion by saying that we also welcome state chief ministers visiting Australia. The provincial to the province to province partnership is also an important indicator of the strength of India-Australia ties. Prime Minister reciprocated and said that when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, a number of premiers from Australian states had visited him, and that had led to some very positive synergies in terms of closer partnership. And he said that this is something we should work on. Prime Minister Turnbull has been invited by Prime Minister Modi to visit India. We expect the visit to happen sometime next year. And at that time, Prime Minister said we could think of having, in fact, another forum of provincial leaders and city mayors, in partnership with the Australian delegation. Finally, Prime Minister turned to Australian expertise in sports. I think this was in the context of the Rio Olympics. Prime Minister said that he was very keen that we should now benefit from guidance and expertise of the world's best sports administrators and coaches and countries which have acquired excellence in sports. Their partnership with India would be very crucial. And Australia, in particular, he singled out, as a country of 25 million people which has achieved excellence in sports, which could be a very important partner for India. Finally, they spoke on cooperation in education. Prime Minister said that there were 70,000 Indian students in Australia, and we should seek ways of further intensifying our academic and student exchanges. Prime Minister Turnbull also welcomed this and said this is something that he was also very keen on. So I think this is broadly the substance of the discussions with Australia. And now I'll turn to Alok to brief you on the Prime Minister's interventions at the BRICS Leaders Summit.
So, thank you, sir. Friends, as you are aware that the customary meeting of BRICS leaders informal meeting, which customarily happens on the sidelines of the G20 summit, was held today, this morning. The meeting lasted for about an hour and a half. Within an hour and a half, this is among the two, besides the summit level engagements that the BRICS leaders have, the only other formal mechanism where the BRICS leaders meet at the summit level, at the leadership level. Prime Minister Modi, in his capacity as the BRICS chair for 2016, chaired the proceedings. And coming to the substantive part of it, to begin with, the leaders broadly discussed, this meeting was significant in the context that one of the BRICS countries is hosting G20 summit. The leaders are here in the G20. To our understanding, it has happened only once in the past, perhaps, when the Russian BRICS member, Russian Federation, hosted G20. So this was an occasion where the G20 was being hosted in a BRICS country, and also for the fact that this is a time where we are looking at the BRICS summit so near, within a within a month's time. So there was a lot of synergy and convergence from that perspective. The leaders, specifically the Chinese leader, called it the rise of emerging markets, and he termed BRICS as a champion of this phenomenon. Prime Minister Modi termed the voice of BRICS countries as an influential voice in the global discourse, and broadly they touched upon the G20 agenda, the convergence between G20 and the BRICS agenda, the similarities between them. They also touched upon briefly the issues of global political and security significance. They touched upon the ongoing deliberations in G20, such as SDGs, energy, corruption, and they also looked forward to and shared views with an intent to the upcoming Goa BRICS Summit. Prime Minister also welcomed President Michel Temer of Brazil to the BRICS family. This was the first time that he was interacting and participating in the BRICS proceeding. He was welcomed to the family and looked forward to his positive contributions to the BRICS solutions. Prime Minister also referred to the core theme of BRICS this year, which is looking for collective solutions. And in this regard, he highlighted certain issues like possibilities of collaboration and further collective action, collaborative action on terrorism, development. He specifically mentioned also the climate agreement, its implementation, reform in global governance, energy innovations. Prime Minister also recalled some of the key initiatives that he has mainstreamed in the BRICS discussions and deliberations, such as the BRICS Credit Rating Agency, collaborations in the field of agriculture, railways, and also the Sports Council. The theme of India's one of the core contributions this year, that the adding of the people dimension and taking BRICS to the people, was also touched upon. Prime Minister referred to the number of BRICS events, over 100 events being organized all across the country in India. And broadly among the themes, I think the member states welcomed the incoming meetings of BRICS NSAs and the constitution of BRICS Joint Working Group on Counterterrorism. Both these meetings are going to be held soon. Leaders welcomed it, specifically China welcomed it, and also South African leader welcomed it. There was good convergence with regard to the setting up of the BRICS Credit Rating Agency. There was a vocal support in this regard, specifically from South Africa. And also the Chinese side was very optimistic on a market-based credit rating agency. Broadly, these are some of the issues. If I may touch upon, the reform of global governance was a theme which ran across most of the presentations. Need for collaboration and cooperation, the urgent need of cooperation in the counterterrorism dimension, as I reflected, was also touched upon. It featured prominently in the leaders' interventions. Goa also was there. There was Prime Minister invited and welcomed the leaders to Goa and found that today's deliberation would serve as valuable suggestions in constituting the agenda for Goa. So these are some of the broad themes, and they also, of course, touched upon the G20 agenda, the sustainable development goals, the implementation of the climate agreement, the need for anti-corruption collaboration in the cross-border context, that was also touched upon. So these are some of the broad themes that I thought that I would share with you in a manner to give you a flavor of the meeting. So over to you, Seven. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
I'll just supplement that. First, turning back to the Turnbull meeting, I forgot to mention that they also discussed Australia's participation in the International Solar Alliance. Prime Minister Turnbull said that Australia was very keen on solar energy. This was a great initiative, and Australia looked forward to working with India as part of the International Solar Alliance. He also said that the International Day of Yoga was a great initiative. Prime Minister complimented him for the message that he had sent on the second International Day of Yoga, which he said had almost gone viral. Prime Minister Turnbull said, in fact, that his wife was very keen to participate in yoga activities, which will happen in the future. As far as the BRICS meeting is concerned, Alok has already touched on that, but I want to just emphasize to you how strongly Prime Minister intervened on the issue of terrorism. He said, in fact, that it remains the primary source of instability and the biggest threat to our societies and countries. He said its supply chains and reach are global. The abuse of social media to promote radical ideologies is a growing dimension of this threat. he says that, in a very hard-hitting intervention, he said the terrorists in South Asia or anywhere for that matter do not own banks or weapons factories. Clearly, someone funds and arms them, and BRICS must intensify its joint efforts not just to fight terror, but to coordinate actions to isolate those who are supporters and sponsors of terror. So this just tells you, how strongly Prime Minister intervened on the issue of terror, and how he believes that this is really the central challenge facing the world at the moment, and unless we have a collective approach to this, it will not be possible for us to defeat this menace. So I think I'll stop here. We all have to go for a very quick lunch, so I'll make the Q&A session very short. Manish.
तो सीधी तस्वीरें हांगझू से आप देख रहे थे। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी की आज जो मुलाकातें हुई उसके बारे में विदेश मंत्रालय की तरफ से जानकारी दी गई पत्रकारों को। विदेश मंत्रालय के प्रवक्ता विकास स्वरूप ने पहले भारत और चीन के बीच जो द्विपक्षीय वार्ता है उसके बारे में जानकारी दी। चीन के प्रेसिडेंट शी जिनपिंग ने कहा कि ये प्रधानमंत्री मोदी के साथ उनकी 8वीं बैठक थी और ये काफ़ी अच्छे माहौल में बैठक हुई। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने कहा कि G20 के शानदार आयोजन के लिए सबसे पहले चीन को बधाई दी, और पीएम मोदी ने कहा कि रणनीतिक दृष्टिकोण हो भारत और चीन के संबंधों में, और साथ ही साथ पीएम मोदी ने अहम बात की कि दोनों ही देशों को संवेदनशील होना पड़ेगा दोनों देशों के आपसी हितों के लिए। ब्रिक्स की बैठक के लिए जो गोवा में होने वाली है अगली बैठक, उसके लिए प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने चीन के राष्ट्रपति को निमंत्रण दिया। इसके बाद प्रधानमंत्री मोदी की मुलाकात ऑस्ट्रेलिया के पीएम के साथ हुई। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने सबसे पहले ऑस्ट्रेलिया के प्रधानमंत्री को बधाई दी चुनावों में मिली हालिया जीत के बारे में, और उसके बाद उन्होंने एनएसजी में ऑस्ट्रेलिया के लगातार समर्थन के लिए ऑस्ट्रेलिया का धन्यवाद दिया। कारोबार बढ़ाने की आवश्यकता पर बल दिया गया और इस बातचीत में आतंकवाद के मुद्दे पर भी बातचीत हुई। और अंत में विकास स्वरूप ने बताया कि सोलर अलायंस में भी ऑस्ट्रेलिया ने शामिल होने के बारे में अपनी इच्छा जाहिर की है। ब्रिक्स देशों की बैठक हुई। ब्रिक्स नेताओं की बैठक में ये बैठक काफ़ी अहम रही, ये मैसेज निकल कर सामने आया है। साथ ही साथ प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने ब्रिक्स की आवाज़ को काफ़ी अहम आवाज़ बताया है। वैश्विक और ब्रिक्स मुद्दों पर बातचीत हुई है। कारोबार, ऊर्जा समेत कई मुद्दों पर ब्रिक्स नेताओं की जो हांगझू शहर में मुलाकात हुई उसमें बातचीत हुई है। तो ये तो अभी तक जो प्रधानमंत्री की मुलाकातें हुई है चीन के राष्ट्रपति के साथ, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के प्रधानमंत्री के साथ और ब्रिक्स नेताओं के साथ, उसका हिसाब किताब रहा।